Hi, Magdalena. Thank you so much for making time for this conversation today. I think it would be great, before we dive into the questions, just to give listeners and viewers a little sense of your background and what brought you to doing the type of work that you're doing now.
Okay. Hi, I'm Magda Watling, and I created birth therapies in Bath in Great Britain, in UK. And my background is I'm a midwife, and I have been working for 10 years in various settings, mostly in antenatal clinics and consultant clinics of maternal medicine. And 4 years ago, I left NHS to help women to overcome the most affecting experience in their lives. To help them with birth trauma. I acknowledge what is happening on labor wards in many births, and also what's happening to women through pregnancy, miscarriages, complications, fertility treatment and birth, and postnatal period can be traumatic, can affect mental health and well-being. It's not only, we talk about physical injuries, but we talk also about psychological injuries, that is trauma. So I decided to train and understand birth trauma better, perinatal trauma. And since then, I'm not looking back, but I see more and more traumatized women. I see more traumatized couples, and I can see how it affects their well-being and their lives. Because it's a life-changing birth, and pregnancy is life-changing event. It's not as I said, it's not a rite of passage. It's a life-changing event. It's the most stressful event that can happen to to people. It's like death, divorce and birth is the highest on that ladder of stressful events. And even though we do believe, birth is natural and beautiful, most of the time is, but there is that percentage that it could affect you so deeply on many levels.
Yeah. And so now with birth therapies, that's what you're really focused on.
That's what I do. I feel like, something changed in me. And for the first time, 4 years ago, I was invited to BBC Radio Bristol and to speak up about it. And I was so shy because I felt, oh my goodness, I'm still a midwife because I will die a midwife. And I'm speaking up for those moms who had, horrendous time. I do love people having wonderful births, and I had a wonderful birth myself, but I stood up for those women who didn't have voice. I wanted to be that voice because something in me spoke like, you need to speak up, because if you don't do it, then we will keep it as a taboo. It's not about reducing taboo. I want to remove the taboo of birth trauma, of birth injuries, of things that are happening to us. We don't talk about miscarriage, we don't talk about birth that can be bad, that can affect your whole life, that 30 years later, you're still upset, you're still crying. Yeah.
Thank you for speaking up those 4 years ago, and since then is so important, and that is also what we're trying to do with Nyssa, right? Just speak up about these things, remove the taboos. Absolutely. Okay, and so today we're going to be talking about birth trauma, kind of sort of generally in some ways, but also specifically as it relates to having like vaginal, perineal, labial tears, if you've given birth vaginally. So if somebody has experienced a traumatic birth, whether that's due to tearing or other factors, it can sometimes take time to really digest, what's happened, and to understand that, what you experienced was actually traumatic. I think so often, mums are catapulted, straight into the job of keeping this newborn alive, right? They don't even have time to digest what's really happened to them. I know that was my experience. So what are your recommendations for just sort of really tuning in to what's happened to your body, what's going on, emotionally, psychologically, and, to kind of, just really understand that experience, following a traumatic delivery?
I don't know how this is going to be helpful or not, Mia, but really important here. The point is, and I'm going to be honest with you, that most people, most mothers don't realize that they have a traumatic birth. They don't realize that their experience was really bad, and our neurology, our brain is designed to avoid the trauma, and it's avoid to bring that, to the surface to protect itself, okay? Because once you're a mum, once you have this baby, the focus, the survival is to protect the child, to provide, to exist, okay? It's a kind of our, very primal things. So we are not going to be feeling like, oh, I feel traumatized today, after that.
Yeah.
You won't do it. I don't know if you had that.
It took me maybe even getting on for a year to really realize the extent of
and usually, people who had trauma, it's very interesting. I always say that, that moms are usually treated for postnatal depression and low mood, because they feel low after the birth, because birth itself is really hard. It's very hard experience. But someone who has a trauma, it's very hard for that person to tune in, into that experience. Yeah. So it's very key here. It will be to understand and be aware of the symptoms of trauma and PTSD, which could overlap with postnatal depression, with low mood, with anxiety, with postpartum anxiety, and they really overlap. So first thing, if you go, and even if you have that courage to speak to your GP at 6 weeks, or that GP gives you that time to listen and ask you the right question. How was your birth? How are you feeling? What has happened to you? Nobody asked that. It's the first question you get at GP is, what contraception would you like? Did you have sex? Well, I didn't, because I'm still sore. I'm just destroyed down below. And I'm not thinking about having sex. So I also don't think about contraception. So how's your mood? And then is the depression chart, right?
Yes.
There is no trauma chart in a GP. No. And I feel with the prevalence of trauma, it's now 30% during the rising from pandemic, 30%, we don't screen. And therefore, when you're traumatized, you will hardly tune in to like what's happened to me, I think that this is such a delicate way, to find, but I think that probably I will just let you ask more questions. Maybe.
We'll get into those types of symptoms. But that's it's a great point in that. Imagine going to your doctor and them saying, "How was your birth? How are you feeling?" I mean, so simple and yet, doesn't. Yeah.
Even our friends don't want to ask that question. How was your birth? And often we just want to say it was absolutely scary, But what I hear from people is that they feel like we've been saved, but the truth is they're trying to explain things, but we'll go to it.
Yes. Well, to that point, what are some of the signs that someone may have had a traumatic delivery? Things like poor self-esteem or guilt or anxiety. Like what are some of those, and what's the overlap with postnatal depression?
Yeah, so most clients that are coming to me, they are feeling shell-shocked. They are feeling empty. They feel helpless. They feel that they are really stressed all the time. They present with avoidance, so they don't want to socialize. They don't want to talk about their births. They put hypervigilance and overprotective kind of hat that they will focus on the baby quite a lot. So from outside, it could be a perfect mothers, this attention is so much outward to that baby, because they both went through a horror. The baby might have been, distressed, and so the first thing you think, you need to protect that baby. So they're very protective. They have high anxiety. They're fearing of being alone with the baby very often. That something to both of them can happen. They struggle with sleeping. So there's nightmares with falling asleep. Because they're hypervigilant, which is symptom of trauma, they don't sleep very well, and they present with feeling really low, and that then is that depression thing. Are you depressed? But there's something that you just like, what's going on? And also on top of that, they struggling with physical injuries. that, you know, that is a pain in perineum, pain in vulva, gaping wound, you know, they're going sometimes through infection after infection if they had a instrumental delivery, and the focus is on getting physically better.
Yeah.
And that's it in itself is really traumatic if they have to go again to a doctor and being touched.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
Many women tell me they're coming to see me after they had a first smear after they had a baby. And they say, you know what, I couldn't have it done. It was extremely painful. I cried. My birth just whizzed in front of my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, and I didn't know what it is.
Yeah.
But then I saw on the internet, I saw this, that, oh, wow, this is me. And then they come to conclusion, actually, I need to work through this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And if somebody has had a traumatic birth experience, what do you recommend, you know, once hopefully they've realized, or somebody else has realized and kind of, you know, called it to their attention, what do you recommend in terms of next steps for beginning that emotional recovery?
Yeah. So it's usually when they come to that conclusion, you know, they have that feeling, I can't live like this anymore, because that trauma it's a ripple effect, Mia. It will be a ripple effect not only on your well-being, but your relationship with your partner, relationship with friends, family, and your baby. So you can either be overprotective or you can resent your baby. It's, you know, people don't speak about it, but you may feel like, if I didn't have you, I wouldn't end up with those symptoms, or I wouldn't have those flashbacks. I can see still those things. Yeah.
Yes. And I think that is really important to recognize, because, I mean, again, what a taboo thing to say, right?
Yeah.
So to resent your baby for, you know, obviously, you know, that just having them has been part of what's caused such a big injury. I think it's really important to recognize that it is okay to feel like that. Like a lot of people,
it's absolutely, it is okay. Yeah, you know, and when a baby is born, and many moms thinking, I should be, when you watch films, oh, the bundle of joy arrived, and you've got tears of joy and oxytocin overwhelming you, but majority feel like, okay, is this baby mine? It belonged to me, it was part of me. And you don't have that overwhelming love, you know. And mom's asking me, is this normal? Am I a good mom? Because I didn't have that. It came later.
Yeah.
And that's normal. Yeah. So I sometimes, when, you know, I do feel like it's really important to recover is to have therapy, but we are not there. If you're not there yet, and if you're just sitting and listening and you think, I think it's me, the good thing I would suggest to write your birth story, however it flows. Do not edit it, don't make it what you remember, just write how you felt. Yeah. It's just pour everything on paper. Yeah. This is really could be very cathartic, and then you can look at it later on and see how I felt. You can put it away and not look at it. You can give it to your partner, because sometimes they don't feel like you may feel. And you can obviously find someone who is a good listener and tell your birth story. But most important thing that I always say, and I remind myself as a mum, to be kind to yourself. Like, treat yourself like you were treating your best friend who had just that birth. You know, with that caring kindness, and without judgment, without judging yourself and your abilities, without judging your body's abilities, you know. But if you can't talk or feel like you can write about your birth, and because it brings you feelings of severe panic and anxiety, that's highly likely a symptom of post-traumatic stress. That suggests that your nervous system cannot calm down, cannot lower that arousal, and so you need to work on self-regulation with someone. And I do love, using techniques like grounding, coming to, to feeling and being connected to your body. Simple techniques like a body scan, when you can Google, YouTube, and just do body scan when you have that 5 minutes to feel where you are in space. just to find that container where you are right now. And my favorite ones are guided relaxations. So you just put it in, you can look after your baby, you can do it with eyes open, and just to, you know, try to slow things down and simply breathe, because as we slowly breathe and stop, our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calming, rest and digest system, will help you to just kind of lower that arousal, so you feel more secure. And sometimes women need to connect with emotions physically, Mia. You know, we don't talk about it, but I feel like we need to, some people need to go out and do fast, brisk walk or run or do something physically, that, like, they do the laundry, they do the cleaning, and people saying, oh wow, you go in obsessive behaviors. We need that because we connect physically. When we're doing something, we just put attention outwards, so we don't feel like we are just drowning ourselves with those feelings.
Yes, that makes sense.
So that, you know, and obviously this is probably the first kind of light bulb for a woman, that I have those symptoms, I feel like that, I feel my story is not like that, my story is like that, and it's extremely heavy. And so this is the time to feel, I feel like maybe I will try to dive into therapy, which trauma is the people don't say that's another taboo. People think that treating trauma takes years. Okay. We coined that 20-30 years ago, when we go and have 600 hours of therapy, which is wrong, because trauma is, it's proven scientifically, it's a brain injury, which means it changes the looping, changes the neuroplasticity of your brain. Therefore, it is treatable. So your brain is neuroplastic, it's very the plasticity, it can create new connections. And so you can put that memory back into the right folder. Yeah, I like to just like a right folder. So when you look back at this, you feel, okay, this is my birth. It was like that, but there's no longer emotional tag to it. You don't feel triggered. You don't have flashbacks. You understand it. So that's what I do with birth trauma resolution. You know, we move those negative memories, we work them in the brain. So when you look at them again, you don't feel triggered or emotional, which is absolutely powerful. And the trauma is easily treatable. So women need to remember that it's easily treatable. It's not, that's why I don't know if you spotted that. I didn't use the word PTSD. I didn't put a disorder there intentionally, because it's not a disorder like there's eating disorder, you know, something wrong. It's an injury. Therefore, that you sustained, you know, psychologically sustained it. Therefore, it's treatable, and you can recover from it.
That's really interesting. I wish more people knew that, because I think it can be, sometimes that can be a real barrier to seeking trauma therapy, right? If you think, oh, it's going to be, you know, years, it's going to be, you know, a really, you know, financial commitment for a very long time, all these things, to like, do that time commitment, you know, working through all that. And I think sometimes that can hold people back. And I think that, you know, just knowing that, like, you know, it is treatable and you can be quite focused about it, I think is.
And, you know, because when I see myself, you know, I personally witnessed many traumatic births. I personally experienced trauma as a vicarious trauma at work. I personally experienced medical trauma, and I used the same therapy with my therapist. But what also I've learned that birth trauma or perinatal trauma, it's quite a specific thing, is a niche thing, I would say, because we don't talk about it, therefore is a niche. But when someone's got understanding what you're going through, your therapist understand the whole birth, the whole pregnancy, and seen it, witness it, it's himself, herself, you know, when you got to go to that specialist, it is a big relief, because you don't have to explain all those things. And you know, it's like soldiers, when they go to now, they use the same techniques as I use. They use most is called rewind technique. They use on soldiers. They don't have to disclose what they've seen and what they felt, because they don't want to be re-triggered. So people often worry that it's like a talking therapy. The more you talk about it, the more you get upset, and then your therapist says 60 minutes done. Now you go home crying.
Yeah.
This is so, but we'll get to this in a minute. So I just want you to ask questions.
I think that's a really important point. How can somebody's partner, friends, or family help support somebody who has had an exceptionally difficult delivery and birth trauma?
I would say here we have to go back to basics of our human interactions, which is listening. Listening, validating, not offering solutions, or getting angry at doctors, at midwives, or not getting angry at new mom, at that mother, like, why did you not say anything? You could have changed this. Do not question the mother. So that's advice to friends and family. Don't question her. Be her support, and ask, what would you like me to do? Would you like me just to listen here? What would be most helpful for you at this moment? I like to call it being emotional bin. Okay, so I want you to be that emotional bin. Just take it and listen. Okay, don't be a fixer, or don't give the advice at the time when someone is coming to you, your best friend is coming to you and want to speak about her really intimate experience, that she just wants to talk. She doesn't want to be fixed.
Yeah. I think that's
really listening.
Yeah.
I think everybody, that's the thing, you don't have to have any qualifications to do that.
Yes.
Because people say, oh, I'm really scared to see so and so because I know she had horrid birth, but I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Right. Just call her. Can I come help you with something clean, or bring you food? And if she wants to speak and said, you know what, I'm feeling crap today, listen.
Yeah.
Don't say, oh, but it's sunny outside. She knows it's sunny. Listen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there's still a lot of embarrassment around vaginal and perineal tearing, despite it being extremely common among first-time mothers who are giving birth vaginally, and that's obviously especially true of the more severe, like 3rd and 4th degree tears. And that lack of conversation can really help drive those feelings of isolation and shame. What do you suggest to help people who have experienced vaginal tearing to kind of feel less alone?
It's a difficult one, because as humans and parents, we often feel alone here with our problems. We are alone with our problems. We go home, we close the door, we feel lonely in such busy world, like social media. And we feel busy. We are constantly bombarded. We are busy, but we are alone as a society. There's a kind of pandemic here. But what I want to say, and I want you to just focus on this, that if we don't talk about things like birth injuries and birth trauma and bad births, miscarriages, baby loss, things that happen now, here, every minute, those things become a taboo. And it's a vicious circle. We can't reduce taboo, but we should remove it. We openly talk about it. Think about cancer. Nowadays, everybody we openly talk about it. Why can't we do this the same for birth and birth injuries?
Yes.
Makes sense. These things change, and this changed because people started coming out. Celebrities started coming out without wigs, showing they're going through treatment. They become showing them raw selves to us. So being open is a key, but it takes huge amount of energy of someone who actually is going through trauma. That's why I feel like there's still the soldiers suffering, in this, because there is not much focus on it. And they're saying, why did they go to the war? Society see, why did they go to the war? And then women, why did they not say anything else? Why they didn't go have cesarean sections? That's really wrong thinking. So we need to just remove that. And I love the one thing I did myself, and my clients use it as well. When it's very early on, sometimes they call me and say, I saw your post and I know my birth wasn't like this, but I don't know if I'm traumatized. And I'm just like, okay, that's fine. I will listen to you now.
Yeah.
But what you can do, writing a letter to your family. It's quite weird now. You will think, what are you suggesting? I want you to write a letter, a message, text message, WhatsApp, whatever, email. I'm not talking about putting it on social media unless you're feeling like it, because that takes huge amount of energy. And when you are going through that, you have no energy to do that. You have at the lowest, of the spectrum, you are there at the 0, not at the 10. So with help of partner, and if your partner is not willing, then yourself, you just write, our baby just arrived, or our baby arrived a couple of months ago. Doesn't matter where you are at the moment. And we had very difficult birth. This birth wasn't easy. I had forceps, whatever happened to you. And things didn't go as we wished. And now I've got, you can say, we can, 3rd degree tear, 4th degree tear, or cesarean section that is not healing well. And because of that, there are some serious consequences. Like it could be incontinence. I don't know yet what this means for me and for our family, but it could be incontinence. It could be wound infection. It could be, prolapse. So we would like your support. We would not want any advice, but we would like your support. And I need help in the longer period of time with lifting, with carrying, with shopping, with going for a walk. Would you be happy or willing to help me occasionally when my partner is away? And it's quite surprising that, and shocking to write things like this, but it can really help because people like to help. We don't know that actually us, as humans, we feel like, okay, if we're involved, we're doing something physically, we're helping. So it takes the conversation away because you openly put it out there and you ask for help. And asking for help is the hugest, another step, things like stopping and to think about trauma, or being open and asking for help is a free things that are really hard for us humans. But because it needs to be done.
I think that's, exactly. I love, I really love that idea of, writing, a message, just clearly kind of stating that and asking.
You can say, I don't want you to comment on it. I don't want you to respond.
Like,
I just
you don't
want
need
you to,
advice.
I just don't want you to feel sorry for me. I don't want you to respond to it. I just wanted to put it out there so you know where I'm in hiding, where I'm not sociable, where I'm not inviting you to my house. Because some people are ending up, I don't want to traumatize anybody here because there could be new moms to be watching this, but some women ending up in nappies after the birth, because of the damage. Some women are ending up having flashbacks and anxiety so severely that they can't even speak. And they just function, baby, feeding, partner, that's it. Everything is shutting down because that's how they cope. We as humans, we are learning to have a different coping strategies. There'll be some people who had trauma and they'll be overly giving. And this one is to watch, because there will be the women who wants to take part in maternity voices. They want to be taking part in forums. They are intensive. They are everywhere where you will see them. And that's the indication that something can happen.
Okay. Well, self-blame is another emotion that people might feel after a difficult delivery. And obviously, you mentioned earlier, like if somebody was like, well, why didn't you speak up? I mean, that's obviously such an unhelpful thing to say. But, that kind of, guilt or self-blame might arrive, particularly as it relates to like if you felt like you were pressured into a birth intervention and, maybe didn't advocate for yourself in the way that you wish that you had in that moment, which is something, I mean, I certainly was, in that situation. I think when you're in a really high stakes situation like that, it's hard to, even if you know to advocate for yourself, to actually do it is very, very difficult. You know, perhaps you're blaming your, you know, delivery medical provider and finding it hard to let go of that anger. So how would you recommend just navigating those feelings of blame and anger and regret?
First of all, I just want to tell you, whoever you are, wherever you are, and how far after the birth you are, this is not your fault. What has happened to you, it's not your fault, and you could not have done anything differently. I promise you, even if you went back, you would not have done anything differently. And birth, the most important that everybody should know, I sometimes struggle with the information that we are fed, you know, speak for yourself, ask for 5 minutes, you know. Truth is, birth is not a place for advocating for yourself. And you are in that primal state of birthing. You're not going to engage on a conversational level to discuss those things. So this is normal. And remember, you're not broken. This is the thing, that you may feel like that. You may feel angry and you feel like this is something really wrong with you. It's very normal response of your nervous system to those experiences. So, you know, with all the knowledge and everything, you need to just acknowledge the feelings. You are angry. That's okay. You're feeling guilty. That's okay. If you want to talk about it, talk about it. Talk as much as you want. Say to people, I feel angry. I feel like those people wrecked me. That's fine. But also, when you're just realizing that you are angry, you need to seek help, you know, and then you just, because there's lots of help available. And also, it's very important that your future birth, you know, we're saying when we finish that birth, it's finished, you have that baby, you think, I'm not doing this again. But then it's that need for you that you want to do it again. So there is lots of help available for future births, and and choices, and your rights. You know, you've got lots of rights, and how you're going to navigate that for the future, to things happening in the future. Yes.
Well, something that we can all be susceptible to is like comparing our birth experience to other people's, whether that's, you know, people that we have, you know, friends in real life, or people that we see on social media. What are some ways to just help combat that kind of complex feelings around sort of, you know, seeing those stories and, you know, just finding it difficult? Perhaps, you know, you've had a traumatic birth and maybe somebody close to you has had a really positive birth experience. Obviously that's wonderful, but it can be hard to kind of navigate that. What do you think?
This is, you know, I always say to people, you know, and I sometimes explain to people who didn't experience birth trauma, people who experience birth trauma are happy for those who had lovely and positive birth experience, you know, are celebrating those things. But I just wanted to say that it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel that grief, and you lost that dream experience. You lost that, you know, that the dream experience, that positive experience you dreamt, you've learned, you know, you created in your mind, you know, that your baby will be welcomed in a different way. And, you know, seeing people who are just having this easy birth, you know, wonderful, with, you know, all beige decorated with the beige baby, and feeling like, yeah, I'm just recovered, and 6 weeks I'm just in my yoga pants. It's like triggering. It can be so triggering, and that's really normal, because it will trigger your anxiety. It will remind you that your birth wasn't like that. It will trigger sadness, and you feel like there's you know, that's what should be also another kind of indicator. You need to work a little bit more to treat the trauma, even if it's, you know, sub-trauma. If it's just anxiety or sadness, it's really good to maybe talk about the experience, maybe just put these things like in a different perspective. You know, I'm not saying that you are not realistic, because most women are, but just, you know, to work that when you see those reminders, because you will, especially when you're a mom, they will be everywhere the bag. It's called something called the Garnikov effect. Have you ever heard of that?
I haven't, no.
So the Gestalt effect is something that when you think of something, for example, if you think about red car, when you're driving, and you spotted that red car, that, I don't know, Mazda, whatever that is, you start seeing more red cars. Because your brain is attuned to seeking it. And it's the same with the babies. You know, when you want a baby, when you're like thinking about being pregnant, you start spotting pregnant women. And when you have a baby, then you're spotting more prams. Then you're more likely to bump into someone, even your friend from school, that is having a baby, and then the conversation might pop up. And God forbid she will say, I had an amazing home birth, and then he's like, bam, it hits you in the face. You keep that straight face, you just say, oh, that's wonderful, and you go home and sob because you are grieving. Many moms you need to realize that we don't talk about grief.
Like the grief would be not having had the experience that you thought that you were going to have.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
So for somebody who has experienced a severe tear and is hoping to have another baby, what are some considerations or techniques that you might suggest to help kind of mitigate the anxiety of that happening again? Because it can be more likely those who've torn in a previous birth had a severe tear, 5 to 6 percent, more likely to have a severe tear again. So that the stakes are a little bit higher. What would you suggest?
Well, it's because I'm not talking to you with my midwifery hat on,
right?
And therefore, I'm not going to just like, this is the thing, but I can tell you from my hypnobirthing teacher hat on, okay? So and the mother hat on. So you need definitely, first thing, we need to move from working through your birth trauma, so processing it. So this past birth experience is going to be in the past, but you still know that it happened. We cannot erase it. And then we think, okay, we're ready, we would love that baby, because we feel like there is that space. We're all finding that moment that we're for more space to fill, and we want to love another little being. And it would be great for for little one to have a brother or sister. It's kind of something in us. So once we work through our birth trauma, then it's really important to have that preparation. So I like to know that my mothers that I help with, they can really relax. And when they can really relax, they can visualize what they would like, because they've been stripped from having that dream birth. They've been stripped completely, or they've been so disappointed, they grieved, and it's all that's done. So now we just think, okay, in your amazing your dream experience, what it would be, like you add as much things as possible, so you visualize it, so your brain is drawn to it. So for example, our sports Olympians, people use that to see how they would like to run, and I use that technique of visualization with my clients. So I'm thinking, how would you like it to be? How would you like you to see yourself in 3 months time, seeing your bump growing, you're feeling more connected to that pregnancy? And it's just wonderful, because often moms struggle with connecting to that pregnancy as well, depending on the history. Especially if they had losses, they feel like, I'm not going to get used to you now because I might lose you. It continues. I had that because I saw so much at work, so much negative events, that I said to my husband, okay, I cannot get used to it now, because people losing babies even at 30 weeks, even at 40, So I'm not going to be like all loved up, but actually working towards that, to let go of those fears, and we understand those fears, is really important. So, and also lower the stress level, because what happens when you stress. I'm going to be blunt, not going to be soft and woolly.
Please be blunt.
Stress makes us stupid. It's helpful. It's really important that we have stress and a bit of adrenaline, because we are achieving better, we're performing better if we have that healthy dose of stress. But when we are pregnant and we're extremely stressed, we don't make the right decisions for ourselves. We become more anxious, and we're more amicable and more kind of with fawning. You know, I don't know if you ever heard of fawning. It's a kind of a trauma response when you agree to things. And that's what women do during labor. They fawn because they can't escape, they can fight, they can't punch the doctor in the face.
Yeah.
They freeze, they are in a state of freeze and shock, but most of the time they fawn. So they say, I'm going to be a good girl. I'm going to give my arm because of the baby, I will fawn. Yeah. So, but obviously I just digress.
Yeah.
So there is the risk if you had a third degree, a fourth degree tear, the risk increases. So you need to speak to your midwife and your consultant about the risks. Ask them for the calculator. There's something that exists called calculator of perineal damage. So they can calculate it adding to your, you know, what has happened to you previously, how old you are, what intervention you had, and they calculate percentage. What are you on a higher risk or lower risk? But that's obviously going into medical things.
Okay, but that's good. I didn't know that is available. I don't think a lot of people know that that's
in a Royal College of Gynecologists green top, I think, policy. Well, there is this calculator which women don't know about.
No. Yeah.
Whenever you go, and if you had injury, my point of view, personal, it's not, you know, I'm coming from a mother here.
Yes.
You have to ask what, because we are always told about stillbirth. Truth is, this is quite rare, but obviously the most affecting you, most like hitting in between your eyes. But the perineal injuries are far more common. So you need to ask, what's my risk? What can happen to me? What's my options? Yeah.
Yes.
So you need to know that. And once you're pregnant, I know that people may criticize it, which is fine. But from my point of view, and that's what I did, I planned for every single possibility. So I mapped it out, what can happen, what I would do. And I taught my husband exactly with him what I would like to do. And I say, this is non-negotiable. Yeah, because often when you put in the situation of birthing, then say, but baby is coming. And I said, this is non-negotiable. And you need to remember that you still have your rights. You know, I'm not talking about declining being difficult. There's things that are non-negotiable.
Yes.
And it's a very personal choice. So I would say, you know, you can opt for a beautiful water birth, which is slow and undisturbed, and that can reduce, you know, the risk of tearing. And when you are not rushed and you don't do purple pushing, when you do everything naturally yourself. But there is no guarantee.
No.
Yeah, we don't know. Or some people will go for elective cesarean section because they don't want to go through the same or similar, or the fear is so great that, and that's okay. You need to be that. What I love when I work and someone says to me, I want elective cesarean section, say, that's fine. Well done for making that decision. It's your decision. And own it. Don't let anybody judge you.
Yeah.
And, you know, say to you, oh, well, you are doing this. It's nobody's business. It's your body. Yeah. Yes. We need to say it's my body, and we are women, and we're put through so much because we are women. We have to take so much, and this is not fair. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. Thank you. That's really helpful. Then, you know, so for me, after experiencing my own significant tear after a forceps delivery, I never went back to my doctor or hospital to discuss that. I wish that I had. I just, you know, didn't, or because, you know, as we were saying,
I don't blame you.
Process the trauma till quite a long time afterwards, and then I was like, well, now it's too late. And, you know, again, that's not necessarily the case. But what are some of your thoughts on using like a birth debriefing service, you know, which is something that some hospitals offer, or, you know, perhaps, you know, in some cases, maybe lodging an official complaint if you think an injury could have been prevented, but basically kind of going back to the people who were there at your delivery and, you know, kind of expressing what's happened. And
so it's a tricky one, because I am totally separate from the briefing service or a birth after thought service. Sometimes I do help clients to go through the notes to understand. They want to understand what has happened to them, but they just want to know if, you know, and they talk to me and I say, yes, that's what happened. Not another way around.
Yeah.
I don't dish them out. Because, you know, I now going back to those soldiers. If you think, if you imagine a soldier, and then someone says to, you know, went through horrendous events. I put the same as a mother who going through horrendous events. And suggestion would be, come round, we will open the book and we'll read what has happened to you. That someone who doesn't know you, but it was there as a bystander and helper and carer, what was done to you. So you read to someone who was in Afghanistan about bloodshed, shooting, people screaming. Would you say this is a good idea? So no wonder that World Health Organization, you know, in